Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're undertaking a mission, you could say, a deep dive into a single, truly monumental figure.
Nagavara Ramarao Narayana Murthy, or NR Narayana Murthy.
Exactly. He's an Indian billionaire, an entrepreneur, and the visionary founder of Infosys.
He is, and our sources really paint this incredible picture of a man who didn't just succeed in business, but who, fundamentally shaped the entire global services economy that we live in today.
That's really the core of our mission here. We need to unpack his entire story, his whole arc. We have to understand the mechanisms of his global influence, the philosophy that drove him, and then critically, why this towering figure of industry has so recently become such a lightning rod.
A lightning rod for a furious debate.
A huge debate about work ethic, productivity, and what life should even look like in the modern age.
Well, his legacy is just, it's hard to overstate. I mean, Time Magazine and CNBC, they don't just hand out titles like father of the Indian IT sector.
No, that's a serious claim.
It's a huge claim. And it reflects his singular contribution. He pioneered IT services outsourcing from India, an industry that's now worth, hundreds of billions of dollars a year?
And his stature, it's not just in India, it's truly global. Fortune magazine put him on their list of the 12 greatest entrepreneurs of our time.
Right, alongside people like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates.
Exactly. And when you add in this estimated net worth, about $5 billion as of early 2025, and then this other high-profile connection.
The geopolitical connection.
Yeah, being the father-in-law of the former UK Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, you start to realize this is someone whose words and decisions carry an immense amount of weight, far beyond any single boardroom.
And that's what makes the contrast so palpable. He spent decades building this reputation as a kind of global statesman, a proponent of what he called compassionate capitalism.
Building this ethical, transparent company that made so many of its employees wealthy.
Thousands of them. Yet the public conversation right now, it's almost entirely focused on his recent, very prescriptive advice about work hours.
It's like we're watching a transition in real time, from business icon to productivity provocateur.
That's a great way to put it.
So to understand why his recent statements are so jarring, we really have to go back. We have to start at the beginning, at the moment. A self-described, confused leftist turned into a compassionate capitalist. Okay, let's unpack this entire arc.
So Murthy was born in 1946. That's a year before India's independence, which is a really important context.
Right.
He was born in Sidlagada, which was then the Kingdom of Mysore. Now it's in Karnataka. And his family was, a Kannada-speaking, middle-class Dashasamadva Brahmin family.
That middle-class foundation feels really important, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it seems like it shaped his entire view on upward mobility and the power of education.
Absolutely. Education was the engine. You can see it in his academic path. It's just this relentless pursuit of technical excellence. He gets his bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from the National Institute of Engineering in Mysuru back in '67.
But he didn't stop there.
No, not at all. He went on to the Indian Institute of Technology Kanpur, or IIT Kanpur, and got his master's degree in '69.
And for anyone listening who might not be familiar with the Indian system, getting into an IIT, especially back then, that puts you at the absolute apex of technical talent in the country.
It does. It gave him this incredibly rigorous intellectual foundation. He was ready to tackle the kind of huge technological challenges of that era.
In his early career, it wasn't a corporate path, was it? It was more academic, infrastructural, almost like nation building.
It really was. He started at the Indian Institute of Management in Ahmedabad, IIM Ahmedabad, first as a research associate, and then he rose to become the chief systems programmer.
And the sources point to some genuinely pioneering work there. He was involved in developing India's very first time-sharing computer system.
We really have to pause on that for a second, because for us today, that might not sound like much, but you have to put yourself back in the late 60s, early 70s in India.
Right. Computing was incredibly expensive. It was centralized. It was slow.
It was hampered by import restrictions, a lack of infrastructure. It was a scarce resource. So why was time-sharing such a big deal?
It let multiple people use the same very expensive mainframe computer at the same time, right? Maximizing its use.
Exactly. Instead of people lining up to wait for their turn on the machine, several people could work at once. It was a huge step in just democratizing access to computing power in a place like India, where resources were so limited.
So he's solving a national infrastructure problem with software.
He is. And beyond that, he also designed and implemented a basic interpreter for the Electronics Corporation of India Limited.
So he wasn't just using the tools, he was building the tools themselves. the language layer that makes programming accessible to more people.
That's the key point. This established him not just as a manager, but as a real engineer, capable of deep, original software architecture.
But the road from there to Infosys,
Yeah.
it wasn't a straight line. We tend to focus on the massive successes, but the sources remind us of his first major failure.
Softronics.
The company he started that folded after, what, about a year and a half?
18 months, yeah. And that failure is so often a crucial part of the story. It must have showed him just how tough entrepreneurship was in that regulatory environment. After it failed, he joined a company called Patney Computer Systems in Pune.
And that experience in a more established IT firm was probably essential.
It was. It gave him the professional networks, the understanding of how to scale operations, all things he would later leverage for Infosys.
But the real pivot, the philosophical foundation for everything that came next, that didn't happen in a boardroom or a computer lab.
No, it happened on a train near a contested border. And this is where it gets really interesting, because we're talking about a complete ideological transformation.
The pivotal moment.
It was 1974. Murthy's traveling in Eastern Europe, and he is arrested and expelled near the Yugoslav-Bulgarian border. This is the height of the communist era.
He was just detained.
Detained, apparently without any cause. He experienced firsthand the abrupt, suffocating power of a totalitarian state.
So you have this highly accomplished, logical, technical professional who is suddenly stripped of his liberty by a completely arbitrary system. That must have been a profound shock.
It shook his entire worldview. He has said over and over again that this single event was the catalyst. It's what transformed him from what he calls a confused leftist communist into a compassionate capitalist.
Okay, let's unpack that term, compassionate capitalist. What does that actually mean in practice, especially in the India of that time?
Well, if you connect the dots, he saw state ownership and central planning leading to rigidity and arbitrary power. So he turned to market mechanisms to capitalism. But, crucially, he anchored that new belief with the idea of compassion.
Which for him meant prioritizing wealth creation for his employees.
Exactly. Infosys became famous for offering stock options so widely, it turned hundreds, maybe even thousands, of its middle-class employees into millionaires. This was a radical idea in the 1980s and 90s in India, where the owners and top management usually kept all the wealth.
So his model was basically an antidote to what he experienced on that train.
It was. Let's harness the freedom and efficiency of the market to create wealth, but then let's distribute that wealth widely to lift up society and reduce disparity. That 1974 incident gave him the moral, the philosophical mandate to create a new kind of Indian company, one defined by transparency, governance, and employee equity.
Which is the perfect bridge to the Infosys story itself. He wasn't just starting a company, he was launching an organization based on this very specific, deeply personal ideology. So the stage is set, the philosophy is defined, and in 1981, Infosys is founded in Pune. But it wasn't a solo act.
No, he launched it with 6 other software professionals, a whole cohort of technical minds who were, committed to this new vision.
And the origin story is really the stuff of legend. The sources all confirm that the initial capital investment was just Rs 10,000.
And that modest sum came from his wife, Sudha Murty.
We really need to put that number in context. Rs 10,000 in 1981, I mean, it wasn't nothing, but to launch a technology company, one with global ambitions.
It's an unbelievably small amount. It just highlights the immense faith, the personal risk, and the sheer audacity of starting a venture like that in an India that was still so heavily regulated and often quite hostile to private enterprise.
That initial investment really represents the entire foundation of a multinational giant built on personal sacrifice.
Absolutely. And Murthy served as the CEO for 21 years, from 1981 all the way to 2002.
21 years. That covers the most critical phases imaginable. The early struggle, the Indian liberalization reforms in the early 90s.
The dot-com boom, the Y2K boom, all of it. And that long, steady period of leadership is what allowed him to really define the company's culture and its processes from the ground up.
After his CEO tenure, he transitioned to chairman of the board until 2011.
Yeah.
But the key contribution, the thing that really earns him that father of the Indian IT sector title, is a specific innovation.
A technical and operational one. It's the articulation, the design, and the implementation of the global delivery model for IT services outsourcing from India.
The GDM. This is the true mechanism of his success, isn't it?
Yeah.
We need to break this down for you, the listener, to really get its revolutionary impact.
It is. Before Mercy and the GDM, outsourcing often just meant moving low-end data processing tasks offshore. The GDM changed everything because it allowed for highly complex, mission-critical projects to be executed reliably from India.
So how did it actually work? It broke a big project down into distinct parts, right?
Three main components. First, you had the on-site team, a small group of very experienced people working right there at the client's office, maybe in New York or London. Their job was to define the requirements, manage expectations, and be the face of the project.
The client-facing part.
Exactly. Then, part two, the offshore component. This was the bulk of the work. All the technical development, the coding, the testing, that was all done in India, leveraging the lower cost base and the huge pool of highly educated engineers.
And sometimes there was a third part.
Yeah, sometimes a nearshore or remote center was used to handle things like integration or specific time zone issues. But the genius of it was standardizing this whole process.
Making it repeatable.
Repeatable, scalable, and guaranteed by really strict quality control. This standardization took away the perceived risk for Western clients who were, very nervous about sending complex work thousands of miles away. It turned IT outsourcing from a risky experiment into a predictable, industrialized service.
And the ultimate advantage, the thing that truly revolutionized the sector, was using the time difference.
The 24-hour workday. Work done in the U.S. during their day could be handed off electronically to the team in India. They'd work on it overnight, and by the time the U.S. team came back to work the next morning, the next phase was done.
It just dramatically accelerated project timelines and created massive cost savings. It proved that Indian companies could handle enterprise-level work.
And that is why the accolades are deserved. He didn't just participate in an existing market. He defined the entire operating model for an industry that fundamentally reshaped how global corporations handle technology.
So, after steering Infosys to become this global titan, he steps down in August 2011. He takes the title Chairman Emeritus. But the story, it wasn't quite over.
No, the ship needed steadying, it seems. In June 2013, due to what was widely reported as some governance issues and maybe faltering growth after he left, Murthy was brought back.
As executive chairman.
Yes, for a specified 5-year period. His return really highlighted just how indispensable his stewardship and his moral authority were within that organization.
He came back to basically reinstill the principles he'd championed from the start, but his second stint was actually pretty short.
Very short. He stood down as executive chairman in June 2014, served as a non-executive chairman for a few more months, and then in October 2014, he finally resumed the title of Chairman Emeritus for good.
But even in retirement, that commitment to transparency and governance, the core of his compassionate capitalism, it remained absolute.
It did. The sources note that as late as 2017, he publicly raised significant concerns over what he saw as alleged corporate governance lapses at Infosys.
And that public critique, which the company denied, is such a crucial detail. It shows that even as a retired founder, he held the company to the highest ethical standard, the very standard he set back in the 80s as a response to his ideological shift away from opaque state control.
He was basically telling the world and the company that the principles were more important than the profits.
So the creation of Infosys really opened all these doors for Murthy to become this incredibly powerful voice in global commerce and thought leadership. We're moving beyond his role as an entrepreneur now and into his role as a global advisor.
And if you just look at his affiliations, you can see his status as a trusted voice. He served as an independent director on the corporate board of HSBC,
one of the world's largest banks.
Exactly. And think about the perspective he brought to a major international bank. It wasn't just banking expertise. It was an expert view on rapid digital transformation, on technological scale, on risk management across dozens of different global regulatory environments.
Skills he honed, managing Infosys's huge operations.
And his board roles went way beyond finance. He advised DBS Bank, Unilever,
a massive consumer goods multinational,
ICICI, and DTV. His presence on the Unilever board, for example, it signals that even traditional businesses needed to integrate advanced IT and data management. He was bringing the digital revolution to every single sector he touched.
His reach also went deep into global policy. In 2005, he co-chaired the World Economic Forum in Davos.
And that's not just an attendance badge. Co-chairing Davos means you are instrumental in setting the global dialogue, in driving the conversation around major economic and social issues at the very highest level.
And beyond pure business, his commitment to education is just so evident in all his advisory and trustee roles. He served on the advisory boards for institutions that are shaping the next generation of global leaders. Cornell University.
INSEAD, SE. And he provided guidance to huge philanthropic organizations like the Ford Foundation and the UN Foundation. This is a clear application of his compassionate capitalism philosophy, taking the insights and wealth generated by the market and channeling them back toward education, poverty reduction, and global stability.
A really high honor in the academic world is his role as a trustee of the Rhodes Trust.
The Rhodes Trust, which oversees the Rhodes Scholars at Oxford, and he was involved with the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton. These appointments signal a profound respect for his wisdom in identifying, funding, and mentoring intellectual talent on a global scale.
And he also maintained his influence in India, didn't he?
Oh, absolutely. He chaired the governing board of the Public Health Foundation of India and served on the strategic board advising a major national law firm. His focus remained balanced: health, law, governance, global commerce.
This immense sphere of influence is really reflected in the honors he's received. We should detail some of the major awards because they really illustrate his global stature.
Within India, he got two of the nation's highest civilian awards, the Padma Shri in 2000 and then the Padma Vibhushan in 2008.
And the Padma Vibhushan is second only to the Bharat Ratna. It's a recognition of him as a nation builder.
It is. But internationally, the recognition is almost more striking because of its political significance. In 2007, the UK government named him an honorary commander of the Order of the British Empire, a CBE.
And then a year later, the French government recognized him as an officer of the Legion of Honor.
Just think about the symbolism there. The UK and France, two major G7 economies, are giving their highest civilian honors to an entrepreneur whose success was built on creating a model that efficiently moved IT jobs from the West to the East.
It's like they were acknowledging that the Indian IT sector wasn't a threat, but a necessary and professional partner in the global digital transformation.
Exactly, and they were acknowledging Murthy as the architect of that partnership. These national honors were then complemented by all sorts of industry and academic awards: the Ernst & Young World Entrepreneur of the Year, the Woodrow Wilson Award for Corporate Citizenship,
The Hoover Medal in 2012. It's like all these awards together synthesize his legacy. He's seen as a responsible leader who used entrepreneurial success to drive social and ethical progress around the world.
So now, shifting from the boardroom and the diplomatic stage, we can look at the core of his support system, his immediate family. And they're a highly accomplished group, often in the media spotlight themselves.
Right, and we have to start with his spouse, Sudha Murty. He married her in 1978, and she is just such an essential figure in this whole story.
She is not just the spouse of a billionaire. She's a distinguished educator, an author, a philanthropist in her own right. And, of course, she provided that crucial initial capital for Infosys, that Rs-10,000.
But her involvement didn't stop there.
Not at all. She served as the chairperson of the Infosys Foundation, and she steered its corporate social responsibility and philanthropic work. In many ways, she was the practical face of the compassionate part of their capitalist venture. She made sure the company's success translated directly into societal good education, healthcare, rural development.
They have two children, Akshata Murty and Rohan Murty. And their son, Rohan, he naturally went into the tech world.
He did, though he deliberately seems to have sought an independent path. He had a brief, very high-profile immersion in the family business, though.
Right, when his father came back as executive chairman in 2013.
Rohan served as his executive assistant for that year. He was learning the corporate ropes directly from the master, so to speak.
But then he strategically left Infosys in 2014 to start his own company, Sirocco.
And that move is really telling. It speaks to the unique challenge of operating in the shadow of such a colossal family legacy, and it shows that drive to build a personal success story that's separate from Infosys.
And then, of course, we come to the most globally prominent family connection, the one that bridges technology and finance with G7 politics. His daughter, Akshata Murty.
Akshata Murty married Rishi Sunak back in 2009. For a long time, it was a personal connection, but as Sunak's political career just accelerated incredibly rapidly, it placed the Murthy family right in the international political spotlight.
The political significance is just immense and complex. Rishi Sunak served as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom from 2022 to 2024.
Which made Narayana Murthy the father-in-law of a sitting UK Prime Minister.
The optics of that are just fascinating. Murthy builds his wealth by perfecting a mechanism, the global delivery model, that moved highly skilled, cost-effective service jobs from places like the UK to India.
And now his family sits at the absolute apex of British political power. It creates this very intricate, sometimes politically sensitive relationship between global capital, talent migration, and national governance.
It just underscores this idea that the business and tech decisions made decades ago by Indian entrepreneurs are no longer just in the economic sphere.
No, they've evolved into these profound geopolitical and familial realities. It really shows the extent to which the Indian diaspora and Indian-led global businesses influence world politics today.
Okay, so now we have to pivot. We pivot from his monumental achievements, his high-profile family, to the issue that has really recast his entire public persona.
The productivity controversy.
The intense, highly charged debate around his views on work ethic. And this all started boiling over in late 2023.
Right. The initial comment was this call for the younger generation in India to work 70 hours a week.
70 hours.
70. And he framed this as a necessity for national prosperity. He argued that if India wants rapid economic growth, it requires significant personal sacrifice and extreme dedication from its youth.
And the reaction was immediate.
Yeah.
And fierce, especially on social media and within the huge Indian IT and startup sectors.
It just tapped into this widespread resentment over work-life balance that already plagues India's corporate culture. It felt like a direct challenge to the modern definition of professional success.
And what resonated so negatively, I think, was the perception that this figure of immense wealth, who is part of a generation that benefited so much from India's economic liberalization, was now asking the current generation to just double down on sacrifice.
A generation that often faces higher living costs and fewer social safety nets.
Exactly. So about a year later, in November 2024, he responds to this massive backlash. He offers a clarification.
A critical one that kind of got lost in all the noise. He stated that his remark was meant as a matter for personal introspection, not a mandatory policy for the country.
He tried to shift the framework from a national mandate to a personal philosophy.
He did. He clarified that his own choice was to work more than 70 hours a week for over 40 years, and then he added, "Nobody can say you should do it." He was offering his own path as an example of what it took for him to succeed, not as a prescription for everyone else.
But the controversy didn't go away. In fact, it escalated. The sources say that in November 2025, he moved from just suggesting high work hours to actively advocating for a specific and notorious model.
The 996 working hour system.
Which raises a really important question. Why that model? What is it?
It dictates working from 9:10 a.m. to 9:00 p.m. 6 days a week. It's a 72-hour week, essentially. And his alleged rationale was that this system contributed massively to China's rapid economic growth, and so it could be a blueprint for India.
This is where his argument becomes highly problematic, and it's why the backlash was so severe. The 996 system is globally known as an unsustainable, burnout-inducing, and often exploitative labor practice.
The backlash was completely justified. It focused on the documented detrimental effects on physical and mental health. Systems like 996 lead to stress, sleep deprivation, family problems, and severe long-term health issues.
What the Japanese call karoshi.
Death from overwork. And here is the absolutely crucial counterpoint that just undermines his entire rationale for using China as a model.
Wait, let me guess.
The 996 system was actually outlawed by the Chinese Supreme Court in 2021.
Wow. So he's advocating for a system that the very country he's citing as the success story has already abandoned and declared illegal and inhumane.
Precisely. The court cited fundamental labor law protections. So Murthy was advocating for a system that was already deemed unsustainable from both a human and a legal standpoint in the country he held up as the example. It suggests a real failure to engage with the contemporary global context of labor ethics.
And the critique also focused on compensation, didn't it? This idea that extreme overwork often doesn't come with overtime pay.
Right. The sacrifice falls entirely on the worker, while the corporation reaps all the benefits.
And this just challenges the core of his own legacy. The compassionate capitalist who built his empire on distributing wealth and championing strong governance is now promoting a model that's widely seen as promoting worker exploitation.
It just forces you to ask whether his definition of compassion has shifted under the weight of this intense national ambition.
The debate he sparked, it really goes beyond just business advice. It's a philosophical conflict over what should drive national growth. Should it be human capital driven by sustainable ethical practices?
Or should it be achieved through sheer brute force productivity mandates, even if that leads to burnout and horrible health outcomes for your workforce? His statements seem to reveal this deep-seated belief, which is common among first-generation titans, that their personal path of intense sacrifice is the only path to national success.
Maybe failing to account for how much the world and labor laws have changed since the 1980s.
So, what does this all mean? We've traced this monumental life and career of N.R. Narayana Murthy, and his legacy is really one of these transformative dualities.
He is the foundational pioneer, the father of the Indian IT sector, who perfected the global delivery model, who established a gold standard for corporate governance and employee wealth distribution.
And created India's first truly global tech giant. But simultaneously, he's positioned himself as this contemporary figure whose advice, first the 70-hour work week and then the outlawed 996 system, has fundamentally fractured his public identity.
But in doing so, he has ignited a critical, and I think a necessary, global conversation about work-life balance, the ethical duties of corporations, and the true non-monetary cost of prioritizing hypergrowth.
The man who built his empire on a concept forged by that encounter with the Soviet system's rigidity, the whole idea of compassionate capitalism, is now testing the absolute limits of that compassion. He's advocating for working hours that many people just see as fundamentally incompatible with human welfare.
It's incredible. We saw how he transformed a deeply negative personal experience, his arrest in 1974, into the philosophical foundation for his entire company.
Right. He converted a confrontation with communism into a mandate for market-driven societal improvement.
So now that his focus is shifted to these productivity mandates for the entire nation, how should emerging economies balance that urgent need for rapid transformative growth, that 70-hour week mindset, with the well-documented mental, physical, and societal costs of forcing systems like 996 onto a modern workforce? I mean, what stands out to you?
The central tension here is just all about sustainability. Can the legacy of a man who built an entire industry on repeatable, scalable, and high-quality processes maintain a coherent philosophy while he advocates for a labor model that has been proven in multiple global contexts to be neither repeatable, nor scalable, nor sustainable for human beings?
And what does success truly mean if the cost is measured in widespread burnout rather than in widely distributed wealth?
Powerful questions.
Powerful questions for all of us to consider as we watch these global economies shift and evolve. That's all the time we have for this deep dive. Thank you for tuning in.